Benson, and welcome to my channel. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and may fall again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming. Teddy Roosevelt. Good morning. How's everyone this morning? 9:36 on the East Coast. Halloween, October 31st, 2022. Today is the day. Today is the day where we will find out more about the murder that sadly took away two young lives, Abby and Libby. And it's been almost 6 years in the making, nearly 6 years. The press conference is going to start in about 22 minutes from now. In the meantime, I thought I could show you guys a few things relating to this case. Good morning, good morning. It's great to see all of you in here. Appreciate you. I am at work. Pardon me. Confrence. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So yes, is the death penalty a thing in India? I believe it still is in Indiana. I could be wrong. I was wondering about that earlier. I'm thinking it was, but you guys remember where I was talking about that message board the other day where the name Richard had popped up? You guys remember that? Okay. Well, let me show you this. So it says, so they finally arrested a guy named Richard Allen for the Delphi murders. His name never came up on Reddit or Web Sleuths, but it did on 4chan 1. And this is from March 7th, 2020. I believe in the origin of the Richard meme came from a couple weeks ago in one of these threads when the Adnan claimed to be from the town. And there was a guy named Richard on here who claimed to be from the town. He seemed knowledgeable about the case and accidentally dropped Richard. When other Anons, which means when other anonymous, pressed him on Richard, he backtracked hard and claimed it was an autocorrect mistake or something. Now we call the murderer Richard. That's March of 2020. That is huge. This, not so well known little message board I sound like I'm in slow motion. It's morning. I talk slow. I don't know what to tell you. Do I sound like I'm in slow motion? Let me know. Let me make sure. Let me make sure my mic is good. Echo, echo. Okay, I sound great here. It could be. Sometimes your internet won't make it slow down. And then this is from March 2020. Pretty sure they are still surveillancing Richard daily, but they won't say anything for the time being. And then this one, it says the guy in the picture is Richard, a local who was near the scene, but was not the killer, quote, most likely. February of 2020. February of 2020. 114 year, I don't know what this, 114 old teens going for a walk together seems perfectly normal. There was never any proof that Richard did it just because they took a video from him. So I just thought that was interesting. This guy, a lot of the killers, many times, will always kind of be around, um, they'll kind of go back to the scene of the crime, that kind of thing. There was this very interesting, let me see if I can find it. It was a photo. Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay. It says this dude was apparently lurking around during the press conference. Kind of weird. Do you think it could have been some, or was it just bad timing? Can you guys see that? There's this guy, and it kind of zooms up on his face a little bit. This guy was just lurking. I guess the cameras caught it. And then this is it really, really, really zoomed in. You think that's him? It's very creepy. Now, there was a photo of a man sitting in a chair at the press conference that they thought was, people were saying it looks a lot like Richard. That is not Richard. I'm not saying this one might be him. It looks to me a lot like him. A lot like him with the goatee. I mean, he's got the goatee and everything, right? Kind of the same coat, even. Right. But the one inside, yeah, they probably could run facial recognition if it's, I don't know if they got a better photo of it though. He had to keep track of the investigation. Absolutely. Can you do a side by side of his face when they arrested? Can't really do a side by. Oh, let me show you guys his house. Here's his house. It's a nice, lovely home. It's a nice home. That's his home. It's a good home. It's a very well kept home. Very well kept. And please read my milestone chat. First prank caller. I don't see it. Oh. Oh, I'm glad to be a part of the channel. But yeah, it's a good home he lives in. That's it. They went there to try to talk to someone, but they never did find really anything. All right. I'm gonna play a couple things for you while we're still waiting on this conference. Go. Oh, this is the press conference this morning. Look at all the cameras that are there. It's crazy. Look at all the cameras. That is why they waited 2 days, because they wanted to let all the press get there in time. Bells. That's the timeline.
It's all good, man.
Is it really all good?
Sorry about that. Advertisements.
Gotta slash the right seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
More than 5.5 years after their deaths, we expect to learn much more about the only arrests made so far in the Delphi murders.
Our Zach Myers is at Delphi United Methodist Church this morning, where today's 10 o'clock news conference will take place. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning, guys. And right now, as we've reported, the case against Richard Allen is sealed. And it's not clear that we'll get full access to court documents and those full details today, but we do at least expect to learn the charges or charge that he's facing. Richard Allen from Delphi was arrested last week in connection with the Delphi murders investigation. However, his role is not yet clear. The arrest came after police served a search warrant at his home, seized his car, and dug through a fire pit out back.
They dug through a fire pit out back. Dug through a fire pit. I wonder what he was burning. Wonder what he was trying to hide, trying to conceal. And I will be very interested to know if the pet hair is linked. You got to remember, they had animals at their house, and his wife works at a veterinary clinic.
What they found as a result of that search remains to be seen. What we know is that Allen is being held in a different county jail for his safety after.
For his safety. For his safety. Let him beat the hell out of him in prison for all I care, in my opinion. What you did to those two babies.
An initial hearing on Friday, we're told that he's not cooperating with authorities. Many here in Delphi say they were shocked to learn that the arrested suspect is one of their own.
One of my servers was telling me that he wouldn't speak much, that his wife would order the food, and that they would split it. He didn't really speak.
He would not, he doesn't speak a whole lot in all of these videos that his wife, she constantly recorded stuff, and he would not speak hardly at all. And he is not cooperating with the police. It's time to pay the piper for your sins.
Today's news conference is expected to include state police, the Carroll County Sheriff and prosecutor, as well as U.S. Marshal Service and the families of Abby Williams and Libby German. They have said that they do not want to comment before the news conference, but Libby's sister, Kelsey, has tweeted that she looks forward to responding and saying more later. Again, this news conference here at Delphi United Methodist Church is set for 10 o'clock. We'll be here to bring it to you live on the air and online at fox59.com.
His wife is not speaking yet. No, Pebbles. The wife is not speaking currently. Nobody is speaking. Nobody's answering the door. So we got about 9 minutes until this much, much, much awaited press conference.
It's been more than 5 years since Williams and German went missing after a hike in the afternoon. The 13 and 14-year-old girls were found dead the next day, but no one has ever been named a suspect. Our Susan Hendricks has been following this case from day one, has also visited with the families and the town. What do you know about today's update from police, Susan?
Robin, this feels reminiscent to the press conference April 22nd, 2019, where you and I spoke about this, and we were anticipating what would be said. All we knew at that time was that it would be a big announcement. It was imperative that we were there in Delphi, Indiana. Today feels similar. There will be an update. Other than that, we just don't know exactly what that update will mean. Will it be case closed? It's over, it's solved, obviously before a trial, if that's the case. But Becky, Patty, she is Libby's grandmother. I spoke to her about this, and she said she's very excited, feels extremely nervous in terms of the anticipation here. And today is the day, is what she has been posting every day on various platforms, Robin, and hoping that today will be the day. But they're ready for anything. There's been more than 50,000 tips called in to that hotline, and Kelsey, Libby's sister, has worked tirelessly to keep people up to date on this case. And they've been talking about it publicly for more than 5 years, and it certainly hasn't been easy. We'll be thinking about them as we're watching this, but emotional. Hopefully, though, it is some new information we are going to hear. Hopefully it moves in the direction of justice for Abby and Libby.
So this is expected at 10 a.m. then. I would hope that whatever the developments are, the family gets to know first.
Yeah, we do know that they will know right before the press conference. Now, they do know more than we know at this point, but in terms of exactly what will be shown, what will be said. The last press conference, we saw a new sketch, if you remember, a new direction, so to speak, and there was shock and awe. And the superintendent, Doug Carter, even saying the suspect, the person, could be in the room. So you see kind of the superimposed both sketches. Now, the first one was released early on, and then the younger looking sketch, and there's been speculation about that. Becky Patty said, well, maybe it depends on who was there. And if you're younger, you think the person looks older, or if you're older, you think they look younger, meaning eyewitnesses there at the bridge that day, February 13th, 2017. Long 5 years, almost 6. We're hoping for justice.
Susan, thank you so much. Susan Hendricks.
Nearly 6 years. 100% proven, says there's no way his wife didn't notice that distinctive walk or recognize his clothes in that video. No way. I'm sure would know if those were my husband's clothes. Walk. Come on, lady. I 100% agree. There's less than 3,000 people in that city, guys. Less than 3,000 people. Got about 6 minutes till this press conference starts. Yeah, it's going to be good. Today is the day. Finally. Just pull this up. All right. So we are just waiting. Did he stop talking so much on the video so that his voice pattern wouldn't be detected? I think so. I think he was playing it. You know, I want to know if there is any other. It's just very weird to start killing in your 50s. There has to be more to this. You know, has investigators found stuff on his phone, on his computer? You know, did the wife know? There is still so many questions. And guys, the thing about it is, we are just now getting started. We've been searching for almost 6 years, nearly 6 years. And now there is finally an arrest. And now the family and all of us have to go through trial. And it's going to be very high profile. We will learn so much more about this dude. These officers have worked so hard on their case and never gave up. I have so much respect for them and hope they'll be all right. This has traumatized them as well. Yeah, absolutely. Wonder if he's the fall guy. They're actually the is he? That's another question. Is he affiliated with Keegan Klein, the Anthony Shots? Is there a ring of these people in this town? I would think that people who are affiliated with Child P have a way of finding each other or knowing each other some way. And why take a photo of your daughter on the bridge? It's very weird. Well, another thing that's very weird is guys, get this. In where he worked at the CVS pharmacy in Delphi, there was customers that he would ring up and stuff on whenever Abby and Libby and them were having the funeral. The family were having their funeral. They did photos because they were getting photos developed. There's not a lot of places in Delphi. It's only a population of 3,000, less than 4,000. They got their photos developed there for the funeral. And guess who gave them their photos? Guess who gave them their photos? Mr. Allen, the killer, gave the family the photos and said, "Don't worry about it, it's on us."
And we begin this hour with breaking news. On our Fox 59 and CBS News teams are joining us together to bring you major development today in the Delphi murders.
As we've been reporting all morning long, an arrest has been made in the case surrounding the murders of Libby German and Abby Williams.
You're looking live in Delphi this morning, where we are waiting for Indiana State Police to begin that news conference. This is happening inside the Delphi United Methodist Church. We understand that there are at least 27 cameras, all from around the country and locally, who have come in town for this announcement from Indiana State Police.
Absolutely. We're expecting to hear from Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, the prosecutor, the sheriff there in Carroll County as well. And they'll go through what we know so far since Friday. So as we mentioned, that conference scheduled for 10 o'clock this morning. So it should be starting here, they said, promptly at 10 o'clock in the morning.
We have a team of reporters who are also there, including our Russ McQuaid and Max Lewis, who will be joining us throughout this hour, kind of break down exactly what happened inside the church. We also understand that family members of Libby German and Abby Williams are there as well, waiting to hear what officials say about this arrest.
And at this point, Daniel, authorities have only confirmed a major development was in the works. On Friday, we learned about 50-year-old Richard Allen being arrested in connection to the Delphi murder investigation, but that's all we know at this moment. So we're hoping to learn more as to what is his charges that he faces, where that connection lies in this case. Like I mentioned, we expect to hear from Indiana State Police, the sheriff, the prosecutor, and since Friday, speculation has really started as to what Allen's role is in the murders of Abby and Libby.
Again, you're looking at live pictures now coming from inside the church in Delphi, where we are waiting Indiana State Police, Superintendent Doug Carter, to begin this news conference regarding the arrest of Richard Allen. He has been in jail since Friday, and since we've learned about his arrest, again, the weekend, to give members of the community a chance for them to even talk amongst themselves about exactly what happened. It's been almost 6 years. It will be 6 years in February since the murders of the two young girls on the Monon High Bridge. This is news that the community has been waiting for. I think we're going to listen in right now.
I'd like to thank you all for being here and thank the Delphi United Methodist Church for allowing us to use their facility. This morning, we're going to provide an update on the investigation into the murders of Abigail Williams and Libby Jordan. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce you our speakers, Superintendent of the Indiana State Police, Doug Carter, the Carroll County Sheriff, Tobe Leatherby, and the Carroll County Prosecutor, Nick McClellan. I'd like to remind everyone that this continues to be an active and ongoing investigation.
At the conclusion of this press conference, we are going to answer a limited amount of questions out of respect to the investigation and the process that will follow today. We will not discuss evidence that is related to this investigation. On behalf of the Delphi Double Homicide Task Force, thank you all for your continued support. I would now like to introduce to you our first speaker, Superintendent of the Indiana State Police, Doug Carter.
Give me just a second here. Seldom do I have prepared remarks, but today is different because I do not want there to be any confusion or ambiguity with what I will say. Today is not a day to celebrate, but the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and complex investigation. First, I'd like to speak directly to Anna, Mike, Becky, Kelsey, your extended families, along with the entire Delphi community that certainly has grown and now includes our nation and even many countries around the world. I am proud to report to you that today, actually last Friday, was the day. And an arrest has been made. Thanks to literally hundreds of media outlets that have been steadfast in reporting and keeping the memories of Abby and Libby front and center. Many of you in the room have developed relationships with me personally, and you know I always have a personal perspective, and today's no different. But from a very personal perspective, you all have provided inspiration and support, even while oftentimes frustrated with us and me. You continue to encourage the efforts, and you too believe that one day we would all be here participating and sharing this news. To the entire law enforcement community, which includes all local, state, and federal agencies, which are far too many to specifically mention today, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are going to continue a very methodical and committed approach to ensure that if any other person had any involvement in these murders in any way, that person or persons will be held accountable. Since the murders of Abby and Libby 2,086 days ago, the daily investigative team has worked tirelessly and is certainly worthy of mention today. Specifically, Sheriff Linsonby, Sheriff of Carroll County, Detectives Tony Liggett, Detective retired Kevin Hammond, former Delphi chief and now the prosecutor's investigator Steve Mullins, State Police First Sergeant Jerry Holman, Detectives Jay Harper, Dave Vito, and Brian Harshman, along with members of the United States Marshal Service, specifically Agent Jeremy Clinton and Agent Bill Culfers. With them today is Dan McClain, U.S. Marshal, appointed U.S. Marshal. Our state police analysts, our scientists from many different disciplines within our laboratory division, Mrs. Kathy Shank, for your incredible dedication to detail, and to so many others that I know I've missed. I really believe that Abby and Libby would be proud of you for standing strong, even in the face of immense pressure and perpetual criticism. Some of these individuals have postponed retirement, passed on promotional opportunity, have dedicated personal time away from their families, given up nights, weekends, and holidays, all while in the pursuit of accountability for Abby and Libby. I know that today's announcement will not diminish your resolve, and I hope you have found just a bit of peace in this most complicated world. This is really important. While I know you are all expecting final details today concerning this arrest, today is not that day. Today is not that day. This investigation is far from complete, and we will not jeopardize its integrity by releasing or discussing documents or information before the appropriate time. Prosecutor Nick McClelland, of course, will share additional information about what we can and cannot say, and also explain to you why the probable cause affidavit is temporarily sealed by the court and not available. And by the way, he has been a tremendous asset to this team. I'm yet again asking you for your patience and please your understanding while our system of due process works. Also remember that all persons arrested are presumed innocent. All persons arrested are presumed innocent. You all will have an innate desire to subjectively interpret and then report what you think. We in the law enforcement realm cannot, and you should never allow us to, talk about what we think concerning facts, but rather discuss and share. Can be released at the right time, but again, today is not that day. It's about Abby and Libby, their families, this community, this nation, and even our planet. The prosecutor has been very clear with law enforcement about what his expectations are, about what can and cannot be released, shared, or discussed. So we will, of course, comply. If you choose to be critical of our silence, be critical of me, not the front line. These are the folks that committed their entire lives to a successful conclusion. In other words, a guilty verdict. As we move to the next phase of this investigation, I will continue to offer all resources that the ISP has. It's not only the investigative team I anticipate growing, but also to Prosecutor McClellan as we prepare for the coming months. Again, Nick has been very resolute and very clear, and I'm most grateful for his leadership. And it's going to be really important as we move forward. Please continue offering tips that you would like to share. The many avenues to report will remain open and will be available to all. Continue doing that. Please continue doing that. In closing, I stand before you in this church and very place where we held our first briefing nearly 6 years ago, and just hours after the murders of Abby and Libby. Right here. Pulling in today, I wasn't really sure what emotion I would experience. But peace came over me. And I didn't expect that to happen. And I hope all of you, with all the different responsibilities you have from around the planet today, have felt some of that as well. But remember, we're not done. I think what we all have experienced proves that together there's nothing we cannot do. But more importantly, giving of ourselves, all of us, giving of ourselves matters more than what we could ever receive. Abby and Libby, though in death, have had a profound effect on so many of us, on how we live, and as importantly, who we all should be. I would now like to introduce to you my friend, the Carroll County Sheriff, Tom Ledgeby, for his remarks. Sure.
I believe in a God of justice and righteousness. Today, I believe that same God has provided us with justice for Abby and Libby. As Sheriff of Carroll County, Indiana, I want to publicly and sincerely thank each individual who played a role in helping us during this 5.5-year investigation. Whether it was in an investigative capacity, providing tips, cards or letters of suggestions or encouragement, phone calls, and thousands of other countless ways of communicating. I earnestly thank those who prayed for this moment in time. We now move forward through the Indiana criminal justice system,
for this moment
allowing
in
the
time.
system to
We now move forward through the Indiana criminal justice system, allowing the system to provide its due diligence and process in providing that justice which is owed Abby and Libby, their families, and this community. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Nicholas McClellan. I'm the Carroll County Prosecutor. And before we get started, I want to reiterate some of the things that Sheriff Lesenby and Superintendent Carter stated. I first want to thank both of them. They've been a great support to my office throughout this investigation. They've always been there for a phone call and always been willing to help a hand or a line of assistance to me and my office during this investigation. I want to thank the team behind me. This is the Homicide Task Force team that we've put together. Thank them and thank their families for being so understanding for the many nights they've worked away from their families, away from their children. There are many dates in a lifetime that you're going to remember. The date your children are born, the date you're married, the date you buy a first house, the date Abby and Libby went missing. One of those dates was last Friday, October 28, 2022. At that time, we had gathered evidence to formulate a PC that we submitted to the court, and the judge did find probable cause for an arrest of Richard Allen. He's been charged with 2 counts of murder for the murder of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. This investigation is still very ongoing. We're keeping the tip line open, the tip email open. We encourage everybody to continue to call in tips, not only about Richard Allen, but about any other person that you may have. For that reason and for the nature of this case, the probable cause and the charging information has been sealed by the court. I've been very clear to everybody that per the court order, we cannot talk about the evidence that's in the probable cause or the evidence that's in the charging information. That will become evident to you at some point and it'll be released, but right now is not that day. Today's about Abby and Libby, focusing on them. Mr. Allen has had his initial hearing. He's entered a preliminary plea of not guilty. The matter's been set for a pretrial on January 13th at 9 a.m., 2023, and a trial date of March 20th, 2023 at 9 a.m. He is presumed innocent. We will have an opportunity and day in court when we can present the evidence that we have against him. But until that day, he is presumed innocent. I want to open up to a few limited questions from the audience. But again, keep in mind, we are not going to talk about the evidence that we have in this case or about the charging information. We cannot. Those things have been sealed by the court. And so I want to open up a few questions.
Prosecutor, when did Richard Allen become a suspect? And do you think he acted alone?
Again, that's part of the investigation, so I'm not going to talk about those things. What I can say is that we have probable cause established by the court for his arrest, and he is in custody. He's being held currently without bond.
How long has he been a suspect?
I'm sorry? Again, that gets into the evidence we have of the investigation. And I know from everybody, it's frustrating. I know everybody, not only reporters, but the family, everybody wants to know more information. I understand it's frustrating, but my goal is to maintain the integrity of this case.
Superintendent Carter, you had said that you believe that you had spoken to the suspect or the suspect's family 2 years ago. Is this man one of those people?
Again, I appreciate the question, but we're getting into the timeline of events, and today's not the time to do that.
Can you talk about how rare it is?
Family, I know you've had a lot of conversations with them. You were almost in tears pretty much when you started off this press conference. Can't imagine how emotional it is for everybody that's worked on this case. What was your conversation first like with the family and Abby when you were able to tell them you finally got the suspect?
It was a very personal moment for me, and I think it was a very personal moment for them, for all of us that have had interaction with the family. We developed a relationship that I think is going to last at least one lifetime, and maybe a second. So it was a very, very, very sad yet a very humbling experience.
Superintendent, you asked for tips, you detective work, it was a reward for $325,000. Did this all come together to make this nexus? Is that a combination of all three things that led us to this day, or was it one or the other?
Well, eventually you'll be able to see what led us to this day. But again, today's not that day. To include the reward, you mentioned that, Raphael, about the reward itself, and again, very premature for us to talk about that. There's still a tremendous amount of work to do.
How would you say that Abby and Libby have taught you in depth that we can remain to continue on with?
I think probably resilience and understanding the value of each and every day. That today was the day, but I didn't anticipate they ever thought today would be their day. And I feel like I've known them for a long time. Excuse me?
You assume there's any other individuals involved in this case?
We haven't closed the door on the investigation. And so that's why we keep the tip line and the tip email open. And so we're not presuming anything at this point, but we're going to continue to take tips, continue to take any information anybody has. And as we've done with all the information we've gathered, we're going to look at that and examine that and see where it leads us.
Prosecutor, can you explain the law? You've asked the court, based on this investigation, that these documents should remain out of the public view. Can you explain, without getting into the details of what's in the documents, but this is not regular. Usually a public hearing is held. We should be able to see all the documents, right?
Sure.
Can you explain your decision as to why you believe that over the next 30 days, no one in this room should have access to those records?
Sure. It is unusual. We don't do it very often in all the cases that we handle here in Carroll County. We did it in this case because the investigation is still open. And while all cases are important, the nature of this case has some extra scrutiny with it. And so my office, felt it was important to seal those records. There will be a public hearing on whether or not those records are going to remain sealed or not. There'll be public notice for that hearing so that everyone can attend, but there will be a hearing to determine whether or not they're going to stay sealed. But for now, to me, it's about protecting the integrity of this case. I want to have an opportunity at some point to have an opportunity in court to explain the evidence and for that not to be tarnished or tainted or anything like that. Again, he's presumed innocent. And so it was important for me in this case to do that. Hold on just a minute. We're not going to comment on that right now as part of the investigation. Again, we just encourage everybody to continue to call in tips if they have them about anybody, and we'll examine those tips.
How does it feel for you guys to have searched nationwide for nearly 6 years, going all over the place, only to find your guy, down the street from your office?
That's a hard question to answer. It's a mixed emotions. I've been watching the news all weekend like everybody else has, and I think a lot of the members of the public said it right. It's bittersweet. It's a step in the right direction. It's concerning that he's a local guy. So I think just different emotions. Again, this is a step in the right direction. This is the first step into getting into court and having a trial. And so.
Has Mr. Allen been cooperative?
All right. That concludes our press conference today. Shortly, I will be releasing a press release that will have his photo and a couple more details that'll also be here for handout. That'll also be on the Indiana State Police Lafayette Post Facebook page. Right after this press conference, I'm going to send it out. There's also hard documents in the back. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today, and be safe as you travel home.
All right, there you go. You've been listening to a news conference coming out of the Delphi United Methodist Church in Delphi on the arrest of Richard Allen, the Carroll County prosecutor announcing he has been charged with 2 counts of murder and the death of Abby Williams and Libby German.
The judge found probable cause for police to go arrest Richard Allen. I want to go through some of the points here. At this point, I think a big part of this is the fact that they are keeping this case open. This is not the end of this, is just the beginning of this next phase of this case. And the information is sealed. You could hear a lot of reporters wanting to ask more questions or trying to learn more about the timeline there, but they couldn't really release much right now because that information is sealed. And they mentioned there will be a public hearing to talk about if they can release more of those details at this time. But at some point, they have to understand that they want to keep and protect the information in this case so they can find all the details probable to hold the people accountable.
There are a lot of questions that the reporters had, and also members of the community who were inside the church listening as not only the superintendent of Indiana State Police, Doug Carter, as well as the Carroll County Sheriff, Toby Lazinsby, who was also giving an update, always talking about how the community has been invested with this case since it happened in February of 2017. We're going to bring in now Hamilton County Judge Dan Hinkie, because he was listening along with all of you out there in the community as to what was developing in this case. And Judge, first of all, thank you for joining us. You've been able to hear what not only the superintendent had to say, but the sheriff and the prosecutor. Are you surprised, first of all, by not getting much information from today's announcement?
Yes and no. I think that what's apparent, and by the way, thank you for having me on this morning. I think what's apparent from this is that they reiterated a number of times the ongoing nature of this investigation. Apparently, they felt that they had sufficient information, and the court did agree with them that there's sufficient information to proceed with an arrest and a charge of a person. But as I think the sheriff and Superintendent Carter and the prosecutor all stated, they still have work to do, and there's work that they're doing. I think that's why they have sealed the probable cause affidavit and the charging information, is that there's ongoing things that are taking place now that they're still working on.
You mentioned that this is like a 3-volume set here, and we're in volume 1. Explain that.
Okay. Actually, you brought that up in the context of looking at it for the families of Abby and Libby, is, do they get a sense of relief? How are they feeling about it? And really also the investigators and the law enforcement that have been working on this case very diligently, I'm sure, for the last several years. This is really, if you want to look at it, it's the end of the beginning. They've done investigation where it's maybe the ending of the beginning, is they've done enough of an investigation that they've brought a charge against someone. Volume 2 of the 3-volume set is now there's going to be a prosecution, and there will eventually be a trial. And that's going to be a very long process as well, as I think that the sheriff, Superintendent Carter, and the prosecutor indicated it's time for the due process in the court system to work. That could be a lengthy process. And then volume 3, at least for the family, will be, how do you put your lives back together when it's all done?
Some healing.
That has to be so challenging and so tough, especially a case like this that has been talked about over and over again for almost 6 years now, and it will continue to. It has to be so challenging for that family. As we were talking about with the questions, as some people were probably watching this, they're wondering, well, they do want to know more. They want to know how this person is connected and all the other facts that we've talked about over time. Why is it important from the judge's perspective, your perspective, as to why to not report on all those details right now?
Well, it's been done on the basis of a request from the prosecutor that those facts and that information not be released and not be made public. Before someone's arrested, it's not unusual to seal a charging information, to seal a probable cause affidavit, and to seal a warrant in order to go find them and arrest them. Obviously, they know that charges are filed. They're likely to take off and run. Afterwards, it's more unusual. And so there must be circumstances that they've presented to the judge that the judge is satisfied that the investigation would be jeopardized if a lot of those facts were made known and made public. But in Indiana, there's a constitutional right to access to courts and to public access to the courts, which you are all part of.
Right.
And they can't keep it sealed forever. They'll have to release it eventually. And so I'm sure there's some urgency in what they want to do in terms of their investigation.
Well, we also have to see what happens with the investigation too, because we heard from the superintendent. We not only heard from the sheriff, and you get a sense of the investment that they've put into making an arrest with all of the tips that they have received over the past almost 6 years now.
Right.
Regarding tips coming in through a tip line or even members from the community. So there's some personal connection to this. So they don't want to compromise anything, I'm assuming, when it comes to getting their person, because as we know, there have been several names that have been mentioned and people brought in for questioning, but they haven't been the person arrested in connection to the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. So now this comes a time where they have to decide what should we release now and what should we hold for later.
That, I think, is taken into consideration. There's a lot of different levels there. You know that just from listening to Superintendent Carter, you could hear the emotion in his voice that he's been very invested in this. And from my experience,
So what's y'all's thoughts? What do you think about this? March 2023, in January, I think it's like the pre-trial or something. It's interesting they're still taking tips. They didn't say that there was more suspects, and they also didn't say that there is or there isn't. Catfishing account line had obviously played a role in this. and it is likely Alan had access to that account. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that it was definitely more than I do. Do I sound better now? Do I sound better? Hello, hello. Hello. Okay. Is that better? Okay. Pardon me. But you know, it's just going to be very interesting on whether it's going to be interesting whether these, you know, the Keegan, Klein, and Denmark, there's a ring. And you know something, this Allen guy may have to do with it's going to be interesting if anyone rolls on Allen. Okay. Okay. All right, guys.